Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. You like your intro?
I do.
See that smile. We love it. Thank you for tuning into Unfiltered Unspoken podcast, where we told you we're going to keep bringing life experiences. Today we have another amazing guest, Taheera Young, and as you know, we're going to ask Taheera to come up and introduce herself, and then City Sid is going to kick off the first question. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. My name is Taheera Young, and I'm the founder of Serenity Energy Healing. I am a somatic energy healer who helps you heal your past, drop your emotional baggage, and really manifest the life that you imagine. So I'm really excited to be here and share all my wonderful wisdom.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us again tonight. So, just as we do with every one of our guests, we do like to start at the beginning of your story. Let us know what your household was like growing up, your adolescent years, and if you experienced any trauma in those early years.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up with three younger siblings. I'm the oldest out of the four. Um, Lived with my parents, both my mom and my father. And growing up was very interesting, but very hard for me personally. I actually kind of grew up knowing that I was kind of like the black sheep of the family. Everyone came to me looking for advice and trying to help them solve their problems. Even the adults would come to me and ask me that. Growing up, it was very interesting to see that. However, when I was around 5 years old, I remember it like it was yesterday, where I kind of had like this instant of like a spiritual being kind of like watching over me, and I was like, what is this? I didn't know what this was. I went to my parents asking that question. They didn't know the answer. They were like, this is a little too woo woo for us. We wanted to like keep you kind of sheltered in a bit, where if you're kind of exploring your spirituality, that's kind of like that's not going to fly here. Growing up, so I kind of had that hidden, and growing up was very traumatic for me in some similarities of like just being the black sheep of the family, feeling like I didn't really belong in the family. These kind of the questions I kind of had growing up. I had a very depressive and anxiety state growing up as a teen, and not really being prepared emotionally and even mentally when it comes to like puberty and what teens kind of go through. And I really had a really hard time with that transition that kind of led me up into a young adulthood. I was seeking a lot of love and validation outside of myself. And with that being said, trauma was very high key potent of like the story. Like, you don't need to, be yourself. You got to do as we want you to do. It was kind of like a narcissistic, manipulative tactic growing up. And that's kind of like, I thought that was normal. And years later found out that wasn't normal, and I needed to kind of make that shift. But overall, that was kind of like the piece of growing up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we got a lot to start with. So I'm going to start at because I hear a lot of actually we've had a lot of the guests that have went through a childhood trauma that has said they had a spiritual person or a connection with someone that was watching over them. So I want to start right there. Um, with that connection, what did you feel? And did you feel like that spiritual connection as a child helped guide you through some of your childhood traumas?
Absolutely. I feel like that was the start of my spiritual journey. I just didn't know who the person was. Now, looking fast forward now, I know exactly who that is. It's my grandfather, who I didn't know. Unfortunately, he passed before, I believe I was before I was born. I don't think I remember meeting him. He's always been with me every step of the way and guiding me back onto the path. I was kind of leading on a different path where it was kind of like dark and negative, and I saw things in a different way, where it's like negative things happening to me. Things are always just sharing that part of my life with family where they would always diminish who I was and really was trying to cover up for me being myself. And when I was always be able to speak out and just stand up for myself, it was like, no, you don't need to do that. That's not who you are. This is actually who you are. So it was more like, we need you to be this person versus the person I was always meant to be. And my grandfather, he's a spiritual person and he was on the other side guiding me back to the spiritual side of things where no, that's not normal. This is not how it's supposed to be. But I realized within my childhood trauma, it lead me to this moment in time to now be able to help people really heal their past on a deeper level, get to the root cause of the issues, and it kind of stems back from childhood. And so I've had a lot of um mental and emotional kind of like abuse growing up in a sense from a narcissistic manipulative parent. And I thought that was really normal, and that kind of really just put me in a dark place for decades until I decided to shift and make a change. And I was like, enough is enough. And then my spiritual team, my grandfather helped me on that path.
And what was, or tell us a little bit about your experiences, when you started feeling his presence, or, when you just started to discover, something was a little different about yourself. What were the like particulars of you finding out that information?
Yeah. So with that being said, I found there was a lot of synchronicities going around. There was a lot of numbers. There were a lot of like cutting off people. People were leaving left and right, like friendships, family members. And then it really kind of showed me like, hey, this individual isn't who this person is meant to be. This is my presence is going to be known, and I'm going to share love. I'm going to share what you really need, and I was actually be able to be guided that way. So I met my husband, who is a lifesaver to me. I always thank him every single day. Who my grandfather sent me to him, and in Pacific we both really helped each other out in our own traumatic experiences through life, and be able to really just share, this is what love really looks like. This is what caring for someone really looks like. This is what a family unit looks like. And my grandfather really showed me that in my husband. And that's how I kind of knew from the start.
Okay. So I want to ask, we go into the childhood abuses. Can you share with us some of the abuses that you went through?
Yeah. So with my mental capacity, I was always told that I could do whatever I wanted to an extent. Well, when I shared what I actually wanted to do, it was like, no, that's not welcomed. Emotionally, it was like not emotionally available. I didn't have an emotional available parent to, you know, be vulnerable with, share my thoughts, share my moments, that I was actually being seen and heard by my parent who supposedly loved me, supposedly brought me into this world, supposedly, um, you know, mold me and shaped me into an adult. So I felt like that wasn't going to be a way to live. And so that's kind of more of the emotional and the mental things that I've experienced. And there's a lot more, but that was more like the key highlights for me.
Okay. Was there any physical abuse or
No physical abuse.
mm,
It was
mm,
mostly mentally and emotionally abuse.
mental, emotionally? Okay.
Yeah.
And was this your maternal or paternal grandfather? And with that being said, um, since was how was it that whoever's parent he actually was,
hmm
how was it that they've strayed so far away from what I guess they have grown up with or what he was teaching? in treating you that way, or just how they were. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this was actually my father's father, who I'd never really met. And so now looking back at it and kind of revealing the veil of like how both parents were uh, who grew up, all grew up in a very traumatic experiences themselves, and that's what they were known. They were not known for, but they were accustomed to, and that was like the only familiar thing that they were learning. And so they felt like, okay, well, I want to shift things. I want to make things a little bit different for my family as I start. And it just seems to me to it kind of continued. It was more of a generational traumatic experiences that kind of kept coming each time, um, growing up, and not just myself, but for my siblings as well. So we all have had our own fair shares of traumatic experiences, but those experiences from my parents, those kind of trade into me and then to my siblings. And so it was like, we're not trying to break generational trauma. We're going to just continue to keep going. And I don't think that they realized that's what they were doing as they grew up as an adult and starting their own family, until I started to say, okay, enough's enough. I'm breaking the generational trauma now.
Okay. I love it.
Thank you.
um, I was gonna ask, for people trying to control your life, how did that affect you? And I guess it's a twofold. How were they controlling your life? I think you've already kind of mentioned the manipulation. Um,
Yeah. So how that really kind of showed up in my life is, um every time I would go do something, it was like, no, we're going to stop you in your tracks. It was kind of like being very deceitful behind the scenes and would try to do any tactic. So I'm going to give examples. So my husband and I have been married for 11 years, and we've been together a lot longer than that. There has been instances where it was not a good idea to marry him. It was like, no, we don't want you to marry this guy is not good for you. I didn't listen. And so trying to control my marriage as far as like, let me do whatever I can to break this marriage up so you can be a single parent and then you can gain child support, maybe alimony from your husband, and then you can live on your own or live with us so we can help raise the children. So it was kind of like that throughout almost my marriage, what half of my marriage, until I started to see the manipulative and toxic and narcissistic ways. Like that's not normal. That's kind of what it was. And then when I wanted to go to school, I was forced to like pick a major, pick a major, pick a major. And I said, no, I need a time to really think about what I want to do. I don't want to just get into college debt and then just go and do this. So I was forced to go into the medical field with doing a medical billing and coding for 9 years. And it's like, oh, this is a great field to be in, and do this. This is what you're going to do. Make a business, do corporate, whatever it is. This is your degree. And then after me doing my spiritual awakening, I realized that's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do is really educate people on how to really heal from their traumatic experiences, because they don't have to have that continue to happen to them as they're living their lives. They don't have to have a generational traumatic experiences that continue to keep going through their lineage. And so that's why I decided to change. And that's how I see things happening.
Now, um, was that behavior just that particular behavior? Was that kind of just targeted towards yourself as the oldest, or was everybody's kind of trajectory controlled you and your siblings?
Nope, just me. So my siblings were able to do whatever they wanted to do during their childhood, during their upbringing, during their adulthood. Now, there was no consequences. There were no like, oh, let me try to manipulate you to do this is what I want you to do instead. it was all me, all targeted towards me, as the oldest and as the only girl in the family. I have three younger brothers, but they're able to do whatever they want. And it was just me having consequences when it comes to not following and being guided by my parent who was saying, hey, you need to do this, instead. So that's kind of how that kind of came out.
So I want to jump into because you said this trickled in to your marriage.
Mm.
Um I guess we can I guess we can start. How did the marriage start off healthy or did it start off toxic?
So it's a mixture of both. It started off healthy when we met, and then when we got into starting our family, unexpectedly, it was kind of like a little bit of a toxic from the jump from then. It was more like you need to take him to child support. You don't need to live with him. You don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. It was more like control over having control over my life and what I was doing. And so that right there kind of started off the marriage in a toxic way because I had a parent who was so controlling and so manipulative on, you don't need to be with this person. You just need to be a single parent. You don't need to have any more kids. It was more like, let's make up the story so you can believe it. So then that way you're able to cut contact with your husband. So you're not, you're not married to him. You're not in a relationship with him. And so those are the things that kind of really made my marriage for the first 5 years very hard. It was more like, and it was kind of like having a debation on, you rather pick and choose. You either choose this life where you have a parent that can continue to keep having their manipulative ways where they're controlling your life and every obstacle that you have, or you can choose a different route where you can stand up, live your life the way that you want, and not have so much of an impact from the parent that's telling you what to do. And so I chose the second option where I just said, I'm going to stand up for myself. This is my marriage. This is how I see things. And you can't tell me how to live, in a sense.
Now, with them being an example of both of them being there for you, you having a family unit, so to speak. Why do you think that they were selling you such an opposite dream, or such an opposite kind of roadmap to your life? Do you know the thought process behind that?
To this day, I've tried to have conversations over the years and even like most recently this year. I still don't know the answer, and I still don't know why I was treated the way I was treated. I don't know why things kind of spiral this way. Now I've cut all contact, because I realized that the energy that was still giving a narcissistic, toxic energy that was still trying to manipulate how I was moving and grooving in life, if that makes sense.
It does. And unfortunately, a lot of folks have these family issues and they don't want to talk about it. They brush it
Yeah.
under the rug, or they continue to go through the verbal and mental abuse of a parent because of their traumas. So I like people to see, because I went through marital issues because of the other side's parents. Um, can you share with us something? I know you mentioned on the child support piece where they try to break you up, take child support, but
Right.
other ways that they tried to come into your marriage and break your marriage up.
Yeah. So with that being said, other ways that kind of trying to break up my marriage was just creating their own stories in their head. So it's kind of like a story that wasn't like true. It was very false. And with that false story, they believed it so much, they just like, all right, let me just ask, this is what's going on. So I was, asked, was I being abused physically? And I said, no, I've never been never been abused physically. I've never given any kind of indication that the abuse has ever happened to me whatsoever. I am not naive with, if I ever had some kind of a physical altercation, I definitely would leave. But this particular parent believe this story so much, they just assumed that this was going on behind the scenes because I had slowly started to not talk, not come over, not do anything, and it was just like, no, I need to protect my own peace. So because of these stories that they've put in their minds, they try to really, really just go a whole nother level to like, oh, let's go into the in-laws, let's tell them like, hey, I think I think your son's abusing my daughter, and all these different kinds of stories that they were trying to believe, and like the in-laws didn't believe that at all. Like, we've raised our child to not be abusive or mistreat any human being. So they didn't know, like, they knew from the jump that that was a very false accusation. But that's kind of one of the reasons why I decided to kind of cut off contact.
Understood. Now you did say, or you mentioned that you and your husband had, your both your respective traumas. Did you deal with family issues on the other side as well?
I have a little bit in the very early years of marriage, but I've, because I've done the work myself, like the inner work and the childhood trauma work. I was able to be an advocate to show the example, like, this does work for you. And then he actually asked me the process of how I actually overcome a lot of stuff, and I showed him, like, this is how I did it, and he took it upon himself to really do the same type of work. And so that was really something that he was very proud of, to show like, hey, this is what I'm also doing. And now he's in a better space mentally and emotionally, and being able to reconnect with his family.
Okay, good. I was gonna ask really quick, how did with the in-laws, how did they respond to your parents spreading rumors on their child? What was their feeling about? How did they express?
So they've expressed to me directly, and then, expressed to my husband directly as well. They were not very fond of that. They, like, were very upset that this person we don't even know, like, we have not had like a formal conversation, let's sit down, let's kind of like talk this out kind of ordeal. But they were very upset about the accusations, and to this day, they're like, yeah, we dislike, your parents, because of this situation that has occurred. It was more like, let's take you to child support court, and then, a parent of mine really showed their true colors in front of a lot of people, a lot of strangers, a lot of people who were in there in the room. And in that moment forward, they were like, we don't get along. So they don't have any association with each other at all.
Respectfully, I understand that.
Yeah.
Um, Now you did say you were kind of pushing the direction of medical billing and coding, or
hmm
medical field. When was it that you decided you wanted out, and how did you make that transition? Without it actually affecting how you thought your family would think, or with feeling like you would disappoint anybody. How did you make that transition, out of something you didn't really like doing?
Yeah, so this is like a two-parter. So I originally did it the first time in 2020 during the pandemic. I just said, this is not it. Um, I didn't care about what my family thought. I didn't care about what anybody else thought of me leaving. So I decided to just leave. I put in my notice and left on good terms, and just left and was gone for 3.5 years. Um, and then I decided to do a business, and really step into that, and really put into the medical billing and coding business. And it really took off really well. And then I said, you know what? This is still not it. So I left and closed that business in 2022. And then I went back into the corporate world with the medical billing in 2023. And I recently just left in the summer of 2024, and I've been gone since then. Now I'm stepping into what I'm meant to truly be, to do, and that's how I founded Serenity Energy Healing in the process.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Yay! Good stuff. So I'm a little
Yeah.
nosy, right? And I like
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
see what people did to make someone, because we've been through stuff, and I fully like people to see the transparency. Um,
Yes.
what did your parents or one of your parents do when they showed their true color?
Um, wow. They really show their true color in a sense where, like, okay, they say, well, I'm not going to really support you. I really want you to do the life that I've, thought you were going to do. And really showed me their color of really saying, hey, this is, you're being abused. You're doing this. Why? And they're blaming my husband for me not being around now. And that's kind of really, I've really start to see their true colors for what they really are, because my siblings could have, a significant other, and they are welcomed with open arms, like no repercussions, no, like it's your fault, you're messing up my child's life, none of those things were happening. So with me it was more like, yeah, we've got problems here. So it was more like the stories, and then how my husband was being mistreated by my parent because he was with me, and because we have children. And I'm just going to say, children are very observant. Children know who they want to be around and who they don't want to be around, and children have a very good character. um, when it comes to adults and even other children. They're a really good judge of character when it comes to that. So my children already medically knew that they like one parent versus the other. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to be over here either. And so I have to respectfully, you know, have my children's best interests at heart as well as my own. So if I'm saying, hey, we're going over to your grandparents' house, like, yeah, which one? And I say mine, and they're like, no, we're not want to go over there. So I honor their wishes as well. So it's not just me, it's the kids too.
That was kind of going into my next question. Because, we always notice that when somebody kind of feels a way about us, it does kind of trickle down to children or how they treat our children. So,
Yeah.
were there any instances where you were seeing, parallels, or what were the particular reasons why your kids weren't fond of going over there?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So my oldest, he's like the oldest on both sides of the family. He's the oldest grandson, I should say. And with my parents, he was the favorite, and so they would treat him with the utmost respect, and they would give him and do whatever they needed to do for him. But when my daughter and my other son came, they were like, "Yeah, no." And so I remember, like, it was also yesterday, my daughter was around 3 and asked me how come, my grandmother doesn't love me and my little brother at the time more than they do my older brother. So when she said that, that really hit home for me even more. And so I decided to kind of like start to come like less and less. Now they're older, they're now almost teenagers, with my daughter and my youngest son. And now they don't want anything to do with them at all. They're like, we'll come by, we'll say hi, and bye. That's pretty much it. But they kind of already seen at like 3 and 2 years old how favoritism works in my family, and that they know that they weren't really truly loved by them to an extent. And they'd rather be with their other grandparents than mine, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Did you ever tell your parents that your grandkids don't want to be around you?
I have, and they were in very denial about that. They're like, I don't understand how or why they would feel that way, and I had to give examples. And they're like, no, that's not even true. So they were in very super denial about that. Um, so yeah,
And have they ever apologized to you? I'm assuming not.
no. To this
Ooh.
day, I have not gotten an apology. And there's like a lot of other stuff that I never got an apology. Not just for the kids, but for me and as a person, I never got an apology.
Mm.
And I'm okay with
We,
that.
Now, would you say that with most recently, with kind of your indecision, I guess about what you wanted to do with your kind of career path, would you
Mhm.
say that your grandfather's still with you, guiding you through these choices, or what was kind of the, I guess, kind of nail in the coffin, with the corporate world and going into Serenity Healing?
Yeah, so my grandfather is still with me till this day in 2024. Right now, he's still with me. He's still a part of my spiritual team. I already knew, like at the very young age, like I want to say like in my early 20s. I'm like in my late 30s now, but in my early 20s, I knew from then I wasn't meant for the corporate world. I was always said, okay, you need to be in the corporate world, never mind about a business. And I always wanted to have a business. I was like, I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own flexible schedule. I would like for work for myself and not work for someone because my hard work goes unnoticed sometimes in the corporate world. I think that's for just with anybody, but my grandfather really kind of like showed me more of like this is what's possible if you decided to go your own path, and this is what's possible if you continue to go on the path that you've been brought into. So it was like me being at a fork road going either left or right, and um I just decided to go right instead of left. And when I chose right, that's when I developed Serenity Energy Healing and versus going and being in the corporate world.
do you feel as though you would have been further off in life if your parents didn't control your life and you made different choices or decisions?
Yes, 110%. Yes. I felt like if I was being able to be heard and seen growing up, I wouldn't have chosen different routes growing up and the hard path that I took. Yes, I took a very long detour of a path. But with my grandfather's assistance, he kind of put me back on the right path, and sometimes I would steer from it and then I'd come back on it, and then now I'm actually full-fledged on it. And I felt like if I was able to be seen and heard, um, I would have definitely been in a good mental and emotional state growing up, and then being able to share my truth and to really be my authentic self at the very beginning in all relationships and not really have to take a really long detour of a life. I think I definitely would have not had to have a lot of hardships. And I definitely had that all growing up.
Now, what would you say are kind of like the pillars or non-negotiables of um, dealing with, kind of in-law issues, and keeping, the union together, keeping it strong through that process? What were things that kind of helped you both, kind of get through all of that?
For the first part of that is the love that we have for each other. And the non-negotiable was for both of us that we both know, like, children will have some kind of trauma to some degree. It doesn't have to be massive as ours, but they have some type of traumatic experience, and that's with all any children in the world. But what was the non-negotiable for us both was to continue to keep having that traumatic experiences growing up and having it continue into their growing up and then to their adulthood and then having it passed down to our grandchildren and great grand and so forth and so forth. That was a non-negotiable. We both wanted it to be like break the generational curses of traumatic experiences. And we wanted to show our children that we have a family unit, and that we care and we love and we talk about things, so we don't hide behind things. We share openly, and regardless if it's good or bad, you still are loved no matter what. And so those were the things that were non-negotiable for the both of us.
Okay. I was gonna ask, do you know how your parents affected your husband? Because that's definitely mental abuse and emotional. And how did he cope through your parents'
So
abuse?
yes, we've had this conversation. My husband and I have had this conversation a lot, over the years, and even now we'll look back at it and we'll kind of laugh about it now. But it took a real hard toll on him, as a man, as a father, as a husband as well, um, to have that abusive, mentally and emotionally abused from the in-laws. It was not a good sight. It was very tearing him down in his self-esteem, and just questioning a lot of stuff in his life, where if it's like, is do I really want to stay married? Do I really want to still be a father? Do I really want to just be on this planet, on this earth? Is kind of the questions he had. And then it was more like, let me figure this out. And so it took him a lot longer to figure it out than I did, because I took the initiative to do it first. And that's what made him really ask the questions like, I see a change in you. I see a difference in you. I see that you're thinking a little differently. You're feeling, your emotions are not like pouring out of you. Um, you're moving a little differently, and you're reacting to differently. And so that's when he asked me those questions like, how did you do this? And so when he did it, he was able to overcome it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what I guess how were you able to kind of like effectively explain your side of the family's behaviors to your kids, I guess in a way that doesn't like really vilify them, or that they understand just kind of the severity of things, or understand how they just kind of have to work at an arm's length, or things like that. What was that conversation like with your kids?
Yeah, so when I decided to heal my kids' lives with the traumatic events that's happened when they were very young, all the way up until, I want to say, my oldest is now 15. When he was around, I want to say, 9 or 10, I'd explain it in a way where, some people have a tendencies to not be very kind and not be very nice sometimes. And I explained that, they had a hard life growing up, and sometimes we don't make best decisions, and sometimes those decisions have repercussions and kind of hurt people, and not be very like not being very intentional of trying to harm the other person. But as they got older, they actually knew what it was. So I didn't really have to explain in more greater details of like, okay, well, how come my grandparents are like this, or how come, my uncles are like this, or whatever. They already know. They know. They use the phrase, "They're giving me PTSD," is what they use. Is the verbiage that they use now. But they know what toxic looks like. They know what manipulation looks like. They know what narcissistic looks like. They know with, when other people play favoritisms, they know what that looks like. So they know what it is now, without me having to really explain all the details.
Okay. Now, I was going to ask on both sides. So, your parents are trying to destroy your relationship. Did your
Mhm.
in-laws ever tell your husband to leave you, that he doesn't have to deal with this? And at some point, did it ever almost cause y'all to divorce or be apart?
No. So this the complete opposite. So my in-laws was very encouraging, but also understood exactly where my family came into play, of how they are. they understood why they were the way they were. And they were just, and giving my husband very much encouragement. It's not going to last, is what they said. It's not going to last very long. She will see exactly how her family is, and she will come to the realization of how things really are in the world now. So they're like, just give it time, is what they were saying. And they would have conversations with me as well, and just checking in on me and just seeing how I was doing. And that was just a beautiful thing to see, that they are able to, like, okay, I'm gonna care. I'm still gonna care for her, even though her family isn't, you know, all the way good, and they're just trying to demolish her at every turn that she's making. So they're able to really just like, okay, I'm gonna give her grace. I'm gonna give her, some time. And now they're saying, okay, well, I'm glad she finally saw it. I'm glad that she finally saw exactly what her family was doing to her, and I'm glad that she's actually able to kind of like remove herself from the situation, so it doesn't have to continue to keep affecting me and the kids and my husband's lives anymore.
Absolutely. Now, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Serenity Energy Healing. What services you provide, and what you kind of been drawn to do with that project. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a energy healer myself, I've been working on creating 4 bundles, which is very phenomenal. Which they're called Soul Path bundles. I have a bundle where it's like a energy release, where you're kind of like, if you're feeling stuck in the moment and you're like, I'm scattered, I need some direction in my life, I can't move forward. There's a bundle for that. If you want to work with your inner child and really heal that component of the things, there's 4 inner children that we work with, and we kind of get that going, and we release those things energetically, cut cords. There's a bundle for that. There's a bundle for limiting beliefs and mindset shifts, and releasing any stuck energy within the mindset, within the emotional state, the spiritual state, and in the physical state there as well. So I'm now coming out with a new meditation releasing circle that's happening in a couple of weeks, that I'm going to be doing virtually and in person, which is really going to help people really, really release things and really ground their energy.
Okay. How did the energy you've always had it, so you had to, I guess, connect with it entirely to
Yes.
regenerate yourself. So how did that process start to take place?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started taking place for me once I started doing my healing journey with, letting go of all the things that's happened to me in my past, really heal that, and really get to the root cause of those issues, and really healing my inner children, and then being able to really release like the emotional component of like the baggage that I kind of had in life and carried in my own relationships and my family. So when I was able to do all of that, that's when I was able to tap into fully the energy work with, the spiritual side of things, like the energy work with like releasing the things that are mentally that we think of, we hold on to, the emotions that we hold on to, the thoughts that we think, and then really releasing it physically with movement, like so yoga, workouts, stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got into it fully. I had to heal first in order to tap into the energy work.
That's wonderful. And is it, something that, is kind of just your endeavor, or is it a family kind of effort? How's the structure working? Do you have employees? Like, what is the vision, and where do you want it to go? And, what have you been able to accomplish versus what you strive to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. So It's very interesting you mentioned that question is because like now my husband's into it now as well. So we'll meditate together. We'll talk about the energy and how we're feeling energetically. We both are very good empaths, so we very intuitive when it comes to other people's energies, what their motives are. And so right now it's just me working in the business. Eventually, I think he will come. My kids are now involved to some degree. They're giving me their input to like, okay, I'm going to be opening my own brick and mortar. Hopefully in 2025, fingers crossed, that will definitely be happening. I'll definitely have employees by that time. And the kids will want to join and be a part of that as well. So they're already giving me their ideas of like what it should look like, what kind of things I should start selling in the brick and mortar, where it should be located. So they're really excited. And now I've created a beautiful place where they could feel seen and heard and be very intentional in working with their own energies. And so they're really ecstatic.
I love it. It's nothing like creating a peaceful home. So
Yes.
I guess what I guess your change affected the whole entire household.
Yeah, it did.
That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Um how so I guess you've adopted two new parents, your in-laws. How does that
Yes.
feel? Because it seems like they take you in as just like their own daughter. So how does that feel to have in-laws that support you, and how does it feel to have parents that don't support you?
It feels good to have that support from my in-laws. I knew that from the very beginning that they were those kind of people that would be very supportive. They understand. They will tell you about yourself, but they will definitely not try to harm you in that way where it's like I want you to hear me and I want you to take what I'm saying to you at heart value so you're able to move forward in life so you're not having to have that struggle. But it feels really amazing to have that wonderful support and not really having the support on my own side of my family. It's been like that my whole life, so it's no new surprising feeling. I have accepted how things are. I understand how things are, and if it happens to change in the near future, I will embrace it. But if it continues to keep being the way that it is now, then I'm fine with that. I've accepted it fully.
That's great. I was gonna ask, I know you said that you're kind of like no contact at this point, but have you seen like effort being made on the other side, or any developments that might lead into reconciliation, or is it just kind of at a standstill where you left it?
It's kind of in a standstill where I left it. It's more like let me try to pride. And I noticed when I had maybe like one or two conversations like a couple months ago, it was more like, let me know everything that's going on in your life so I can kind of figure out behind the scenes and how to really rip this apart. So you are not in that space. So I kind of picked up on it like instant and I was like, yeah, no, we've got to call like no contact whatsoever. I mean, I love from a distance. The love is still there. I always will love my family. But I just don't have to be a part of your life to do that. And I don't have to be in that space negatively. I don't have to be in that space to love you from a distance.
Are you I have a question behind this, but real quick, are you in touch with your siblings?
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
No.
And okay. I was gonna ask the what is the key for your relationship? So maybe your marriage can help another marriage. What is the key to keeping your marriage together after dealing with abuse from a set of parents? Well,
I would say most importantly, communication is the key. Being open and honest, not only with yourself, but with your partner as well. That goes a long way. And even if it's like hard to really talk about things, just find a common ground to really start to open yourself up to be open, but and share what it is that is on your mind, on your heart, and how you're feeling, and just giving the space for one another to be vulnerable, because that's where the real true healing starts from that moment forward.
And I don't know if you mentioned it. If you did, I apologize. But when you begin your healing journey, what route did you take? Did you seek therapy? Did you kind of do, kind of research on your own what might work best for you? Which route did you take, and what kind of led you in that direction?
Oh, yeah. Very good question. No, I did not mention this. So, um, the way I started was I actually started to do it on my own. I didn't have therapy at the time, and that didn't come until Mitch, like a couple years later. But when I started originally, I did it on my own. I wanted to learn how to connect with myself, like learn to love me, because that was one of the things that was missing growing up. Like, I didn't love myself enough to be able to stand up for myself growing up and really, like, this is how I want things to be done. And it didn't happen until I was kind of forced. And I think that's when my grandfather was like, okay, I'm going to force you to do this now. There's no avoiding it. So my grandfather just showed me, like, okay, your parents are not going to help you with daycare with your children. You're going to now have to figure that out. You're now going to have to figure out how you're going to survive with, like, work wise. So with that transpired, I had like literally a whole month before I started a new job working at home. And that's when I started to think, okay, enough's enough. I can't keep living life like this in a cycle, depending on my family to help me with my children when I'm at work, and I needed to figure out how I'm going to heal from these obstacles. And so I kind of figured it out on my own. I didn't read any books. I didn't have like a coach or a mentor or a therapist at the time to help me through this. I kind of and my grandfather really guided me in that moment. I didn't know who he was at the time, but he guided me through the journey process.
All right. So we are almost at time. I want to ask, um, can you give the audience advice dealing with controlling and manipulative parents, how to help navigate through that journey, and maybe something that helped you go to the next level to just say that that's it. I'm moving
Yeah.
forward without them.
Yeah, absolutely. I always go back to, we all have choices in life, and we always have a path A and a path B. A path A could be currently what you're going through now, through a controlling environment from a parent or a family member. And the path B could be whatever you choose it to make it to be. I always say my encouragement is that we all have a choice. And if you just decide to go through path B, you can choose how you want that is. You can choose that life and how you want that life to look like. And if you've come to the terms to not have your family in your life, for whatever reason that is, and you have to accept that's what how that is. And if things change, tread lightly. Tread lightly, because that could be another alternative of theirs, of like, okay, let me act and say the things that I want you to hear so you can come back into my life. Well, my thing is just heal. Heal deeply wounds, heal deeply mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Heal all the avenues that either a person has caused you, or a family member, or multiple people in your life, in order for you to move to the next level. Without that, you're not going to be able to embrace that next level fully without it.
Thank you for that. So we do
You're
like to
welcome.
give you the opportunity to shamelessly plug yourself and everything that you have going on. You see your banner scrolling across the bottom here. Just let our viewers know how they can utilize your services, contact you, If there's anything that you want to draw traffic or attention to, if you have anything for sale, you have the floor.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so if you are find this episode very useful and helpful for you and you're wanting to start your journey in healing, head over to my website, serenityenergyhealing.co, where you find all the services that I offer and a link where you're able to book easily for in-person and virtual sessions.
Is that it? You have any books or anything else coming up?
I actually am in the middle of writing my book now, that will hopefully be released in 2025, maybe 2026. But I am coming out with a book very soon.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so we want to thank everybody for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken podcast, where we're told you we're going to continue to share life experiences. So if you are coping with dealing with a narcissistic, controlling parent that is telling you what to do, trying to control your relationships, I hope this episode with Tahira is going to help you. She went through a lot, very positive. Wonderful feedback. So hopefully this will help you and also help you keep a strong, healthy marriage. It's good to have someone that will support you through the journey and that y'all both grow and heal together. So thank you, Tahiri, for being a guest on Unfiltered Unspoken podcast.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And see, we're going to keep bringing those life experiences, ain't we?
We are.
Peace.